What do you want to be when you grow up? Or maybe the better question is, what will your potential allow you to become? The new Apple TV Plus comedy, The Big Door Prize, stars Chris O'Dowd and asks that exact question. But does it provide a satisfying answer? A small town is forever changed when a mysterious machine appears in the general store, promising to reveal each resident's true life potential. This is a weekly episodic release with the first 3 episodes dropping at once and then one each week until May 17th. There are 10 episodes for the first season and they each hover around the 30-minute mark. Now, in this small town of Deerfield, a video game-like machine shows up one day in the grocery store, and when people use it, it will spit out a card that supposedly tells them their true life potential. The comedy in this, it's slightly dark, but what drew me into this even more was the amount of social commentary that's present. And one of the most obvious areas of commentary surrounds just contentedness and how people perceive their self-worth. Chris O'Dowd is a high school history teacher who's really only been in one relationship, and that's with the woman he married 20-something years ago. They live in the town they grew up in, and many of the people in the town are also longtime residents, creating a lot of familiarity with the characters. There's a decent-sized ensemble cast for this, and each episode uses a character as its central focus to help build out the story. Now, all through the show, we'll get to know characters, but then we get more of a deep dive into them in a particular episode, and I found that to make the show as a whole much more engaging. Now, as the story moves along, there's a small mystery that surrounds how the machine appeared in the town and why. We get some revelations later in the season, but there aren't really any concrete answers yet. And that keeps a ton of the intrigue building because as episodes continue, more conflicts and complications arise, diving more into the internal dramas and even psyches of the characters. Now, I love watching the struggles that the characters experience, making them very relatable as they contemplate what makes them content and whether or not an idea created by a mysterious machine can have any true impact on their lives or their happiness. The existential crises some of the characters encounter does occasionally go into the melodramatic, but within the larger context of the show, these work rather than stand out as awkwardly placed. Now, in addition to O'Dowd, there are many characters to just help drive the narrative. There's Gabrielle Dennis, Josh Segarra, Djouliet Amara, Damon Gupton, Sammy Fourlas, Maki, Crystal Fox, Mary Holland, Roman Weiner, and Patrick Kerr. And each of these plays pivotal roles in the storytelling, and each of them also has some absurdity to their characters, which is necessary to play up the comedy aspect. Now, probably the most over-the-top character, at least consistently, is Josh Segarra's Giorgio. Now, you may recognize the actor as he was just in Scream 6, but here, he plays a guy who's desperately grasping to be accepted and then recognized by his friends. He's abrasive, incredibly arrogant, sometimes slimy, and yet he also elicits a ton of sympathy as we get to know him more. And this is the case for the majority of the cast in the show. I mean, they're definitely and obviously flawed people. But when we get to see more into their hearts, their relatability, and their motivations help them to become very endearing. The pacing of the episodes is quick, but the episodes also pack in a lot of content. So despite them being only about 30-ish minutes, the stories feel full and building rather than just filler or unforgettable interactions. And when I say they feel full, I mean that doesn't mean slow or dragging. We just get a great deal of story development as well as character development in each outing so that they all feel satisfying as a watch. But with that said, because I had access to the whole season, I binged it all. Now, waiting week to week, it may be a little harder to become fully engaged, especially when some episodes end on more of a cliffhanger or in the middle of an action. I think it's awesome that the first 3 episodes are dropping at once, so the show has the opportunity to really hook you in. But then this may be one of those shows that you watch every other week from there so that you can binge 2 episodes at a time. Every episode to me was satisfying, though. I mean, the story elements, they continue to build on one another. And while the mystery of why the machine is there isn't a huge focus consistently, the ramifications of people's actions and decisions based on what their card says are always at the center, driving the drama. I do think some of the progressions and the outcomes are predictable, but it didn't really ruin anything for me. Mostly that's because the mystery that's involved here isn't the main focus. And when I do say predictable, I mean that we can see the trajectories of some relationships, but the final outcomes, they still remain somewhat unknown, which I think is a plus. Now, for as much as comedy as the show has, there's also melancholy that's present. And that mainly comes about as the characters struggle with the dilemmas brought about by the cards. These create ripples in relationships, they cause doubt as to callings or occupations, and they unearth unfulfilled longings and goals. And all of these touch on real issues, which is why I think the layered commentary is so powerful and effective. This is one of those shows that's going to make you laugh, wince, and maybe even go into some deep thought, but it's entertaining the entire way through. And when the show gets to the season finale, there's a massive moment that just leaves me wanting season 2 right now. So overall, the Big Door Prize capitalizes on the quirkiness of small town life by creating a scenario that thrusts all the previously content residents into a state of self-doubt. The relationship aspects are rich with heart and complications, which are made relatable thanks to the excellent performances. Chris O'Dowd leads a talented cast where the wit and humor mixes well with the drama to create storylines that are impactful and insightful, creating laughs as well as delivering some gut punches along the way. The biggest downside to this show is that it's a weekly release, meaning audiences have to wait for their next fix to see who will live up to their final potential. There's no sex, brief nudity, a ton of profanity, and a little bit of violence. I give season 1 of the Big Door Prize 4 out of 5 couches. So I'm excited to see where this leads, and I like what the story's built so far. So if you were given a card that supposedly said what your life's potential was, but it was different than how you're currently living, do you think it would make an impact on you? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.